Good morning and welcome to Balham Baptist Online. How did your sunflowers grow over the summer? Did you create a beautiful, tall, golden sunflower? Or more like me, did you plant a bit of an accident and it's just a curly, whirly plant that's looking to escape from the household? It was a bit of a nightmare. But as we move into a new season and a new month, we've got an opportunity to notice these new green shoots of opportunities that are all around us. Yes, the evenings might be drawing to a bit of a close a lot earlier than we'd like, but there's still something that we can cultivate from this. There's still something beautiful that can happen in this season. Take this week, for example. I was working from home and I was able to respond to my neighbour's calls when she needed me. She really needed someone to be present in that moment, and I was so glad to be able to respond to that. It's something that I couldn't have done before if I was on my normal front line. And now we've been able to continue that bond and continue that sense of community with one another. This week, we're starting a new series, and Steve is going to be talking to us about how we can respond to the challenge of living life like a disciple and the opportunities that come with that. But first, let's hear from Jim with the church update.
So we've reached September, and I don't know about you, but over the last few months, I kind of saw September as, then everything will be clearer, everything will be obvious. And of course, it isn't quite yet. We go into September amidst a whole bunch of changes. Some of us going back to work, people going back to work physically, some people going back to school, going into new classes and new routines, even to whole new environments. And therefore, it's so important to remember that we as church stand together. You know, we're not just isolated. We're not just stumbling in the dark, although sometimes in life that is how it feels. But we have friends for the journey, and we have people who walk alongside us. One of the things we hold dear as a church is the fact that we are a family, a diverse family of backgrounds and generations and viewpoints and perspectives. And it's so important at this time to recognise that we are with one another. Over the last month or so, we've been experimenting with how we might start to get more back together physically. And we've done this through kind of physical prayer meetings alongside kind of an online gathering as well. We did this last week. We had a church picnic up on one of the local commons, and it was great to see so many people kind of coming together, being brilliantly socially distant and responsible, but wonderful to spend some time together, even if it was a little bit chilly, but it didn't rain, so I mean that's success for me. It's success. And brilliant to see so many kids running around together and reconnecting after so long. It's a wonderful time together. And therefore, in September, over the 4 Sundays in September, we're going to continue experimenting, continue trying a new thing, just a little 1 degree shift. A whole bunch of people have been saying how much they've appreciated our online worship and engaging with that. And what we're encouraging you to do each week in September is on a Sunday is try and get together with one other in your home or in theirs. It might be of an individual, or it might be one other household that you can get together with. But we're encouraging you to come together, whether in your home or theirs, or in a local coffee shop or on a common, and to engage with our online worship, to kind of watch together with a cup of tea, with a biscuit, and have a chance to hang out together and share together. And what we're encouraging you to do is after kind of watching along online and listening to what God might be saying, is to just have a short little conversation around 3 simple questions. What's got your attention? What do you think God might be saying to you? And is there anything you think God is saying to us as a church? I don't know about you, but I go into September knowing that there aren't any maps for this kind of world. There isn't any kind of obvious road signs about where we go next and what we do next in our lives as church and beyond. And therefore it's so important as a community to be exploring that together, to be wrestling with that together, to be tuning into God's voice together. Because one of our other values is that we are led by God. We're not led by good ideas or common sense. We're led by him because we know that he leads us in life in all its fullness, even when it feels like we might be floundering. And therefore, these 4 Sundays, try and get together with somebody else. If you can, try and get together with somebody who's local to you. Maybe try and find somebody who might not have access to our online content as easily as you do, so that you might be able to connect with them and bring life to them. If you're not sure where to start with that, then get in touch with us. Drop us an email, give me a ring, and we can try and kind of matchmake you and find you a few different options of people you might like to get together with. Grab the church family album, have a flick through, look at people's postcodes and addresses, and find somebody who is near you. I appreciate though that for some people that might be a bit uncomfortable. You might not be sure about having someone into your home, and you might not be sure about going into somebody else's home. And therefore what we're going to do is run another one of those groups in our church buildings each Sunday morning at 10:30. We'll gather there, we'll engage with our online content. We'll be a bit more socially distant than you might be able to be in someone's home, be kind of with face coverings on, and obviously no tea, no biscuits. But if for you'd like to be near others, but you're just not quite sure about the environment you go into, then you're more than welcome to come and join us there to sit and to reflect together. But like I say, you cannot beat a good chocolate biscuit and a good hot cup of tea or coffee with a smiling face next to you. It's a brilliant and wonderful thing. So if you can, that's the way to go. As we move on from here, I want to read you some verses from Isaiah 43. Incredible words about this God for whom nothing is unexpected. You know, he's been around the block a few times. He knows what is coming. And if I'd marked the place in my Bible, this would have taken a little bit less time. But these are the words from Isaiah 43 and verse 19. And they're great words of hope. It says, "See, I, this is God, am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not see it? I am making a way in the desert and streams in the wasteland." And it's our prayer that as we seek God's direction in a world where we might not be sure what the future looks like, as we gather with others, we gain some of that kind of refreshment of those streams in the wasteland in connection with others, and that we know God's leading through the desert.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship his holy name, sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship his holy name, sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship your my strength is failing, the end draws near, and my time has come. Still my soul will sing your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship your holy name. I worship your holy name. Yes, I worship your holy name.
In our church, we're a group of people who we love discovering life together, learning about what it's all about. And then we love trying in all sorts of ways to live that out in our everyday lives. We're starting a new series today, a series simply called Prosper. And we're thinking about what does God call his community, the church, to be in all the different places that we find ourselves. Now, I don't want you to be a spectator, and I don't know whether you'll have time to do it right now, but if you can, find yourself a Bible, maybe even a notepad and pen, and just capture the things that you feel God is saying to you as we go throughout this series. Try each week to come ready for that. First, a bit of exercise. We're going to be looking at just one verse today from the book of Proverbs. It's right in the middle of the Bible. If you kind of almost drop it open, you might land in Psalms, but if you go to the right, you'll find the book of Proverbs. Look for chapter 11, and I'm just going to be reading verse 10. It says this: "When the righteous prosper, the city rejoices." When the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. For those who have been part of church communities for a while, as we look back over this last 5 months, one of the questions we've been asking ourselves is, what is God doing with his church? I heard a phrase this week that really rocked me. It's by a guy, or it's a quote from a talk by a guy called David Kinnaman, and he said this: "Bar a genuine move of God and radical discipleship, statistically, we've lost the church. We can't get it back by human means." The church was in a crisis long before COVID-19 ever happened, but COVID-19 and this last 5 months has provided an opportunity, a potential for an awakening of God's people, an invitation from God to return to him. And yet I heard this week of a church who, back in March, posted a sign on the doors of their church building, and it said this: "We'll see you again when this is all over." That was the posture that they took as a community towards their neighborhood. So many people, so many Christians are simply waiting for the doors of their church to open once again. And there's a sense in which we could say, they've never been more open. We've never been more the church. Have we missed the opportunity? Have we missed the invitation of God to rediscover who he calls us to be as his church? We're dropping into this book of Proverbs today, and this will kind of shape the series over the next 4 weeks of September. Proverbs is a book of wisdom. Wisdom is it's like God's know-how. how to live life. And this verse that says, when the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. The book of Proverbs is all about wisdom. It's all about how we live our lives in the everyday. And at the heart of the book of wisdom is this phrase where wisdom is caring about justice. Proverbs 29:7 says, the righteous care about justice for the poor, but the wicked have no such concern. Something that we have to grasp is the meaning of words sometimes in the Bible. And the meaning of the word care here needs to be explained a little bit. The English word doesn't quite get it. The word is used in other places. In fact, it's used in one place in the story of Adam and Eve, where it speaks about how Adam knew his wife. It's kind of speaking of their very intimate relationship, in fact, of their sexual union with each other. It's that kind of intimacy. It has that kind of intensity about it. What's being said here in Proverbs is you're not wise unless you're living your life intensely committed to justice. Justice is about restoring things. It's about working to put things back together in the way God intended them to be in the first place. Our God created a perfect world, a world in which he said he was really pleased with it. Psalm 102 speaks about that creation as being like a garment that God has made up of loads of different threads and yet woven together in a careful way to make a whole garment. We talk about, for example, the fabric of society. And it's been powerful over the last few months, looking at what's happening in our neighborhoods, how people have been caring for one another as neighbors. And it's as though we've been seeing the fabric of society being put back together. And everybody I speak to just celebrates it, loves the fact that we see that neighborliness once again. People working together for the sake of one another. When you are plowing your time and your talent and your treasure into the lives of those around you, instead of being selfish, then your family is strong, community is strong, neighborhoods are strong. But when people live for themselves, you have a coming apart of the way in which God made things to be. We have to put it back on ourselves as a church. I've noticed over the years as being part of a church community that sometimes Christians only want to care for those that are members of and part of their own church community. It's not what God says. He talks about caring for the justice, caring for the well-being of everyone. Or think about it just in day-to-day life. Things come apart when something as simple as you see somebody's car door open and they empty onto the street the packaging of their McDonald's takeaway. And you just have that sense that somehow something's coming apart when people treat their neighborhood in that kind of a way. Think about yourself as a person. When you feel that you're well mentally and physically and emotionally, you feel like everything's together and you prosper as a person when you're operating in that way. But if any of those gets out of whack, you feel mentally down or emotionally low or physically tired, then you don't feel like you've got it all together. Gaining wisdom is realizing that we are to live our lives and use our talents and time and treasure to intensely care about one another and intensely care about our neighborhoods and intensely care about our world, and then work for it being restored to what it was intended to be in the first place. So wisdom is about getting that kind of know-how about how God wants us to live, and then us playing our part in trying to work towards the restoration of it. That verse that I read about the righteous prospering, we just ask the question, well, who are the righteous? Unfortunately, it's one of those words that when you think about somebody being called righteous, it's almost it's almost said in a kind of they're an annoying goody-goody, as it were. They're such a righteous kind of a person. But the righteous, in this particular verse, the righteous are those who know that they are called by God to steward all that he's given them for the common good of others. The righteous are those that are willing to disadvantage themselves for the sake of their community. The righteous are those who are willing to use their gifts for God's purposes, their abilities, their time, their possessions, that they constantly ask the question, Lord, how can I use these things for the benefit of others? It's someone who has gained the wisdom to see life, to see their lives differently. They steward their money, their work, their opportunities, their relationships for the sake of the common good. That's who the righteous are. Not that they would think that of themselves. They just have this way of seeing how they're meant to live their life. And what does it mean that they prosper? A human that is prospering is somebody who is alive, who is awake to God's calling upon them. And the first thing I would want to say about that is that somebody is awake to the fact that God has given us abilities and time and talents, and is awake to the fact that I've been given these to do something with, to steward them for the sake of others. The righteous and those that prosper live God's way in their relationships, in their place of work, in their socializing, as citizens, and they do so for the common good. It's astounding, and we've heard it far too often, that even within the church community, you get people who've been said over the last few months, well, I'm not wearing a mask. I can't have people telling me that I have to wear a mask. But wearing a mask is not about you. It's about others. And it's about their good and their health and well-being. A prospering human is someone who sees what they have and sees the need of another and then stewards what they have in order to restore justice, as it were, in that person's life. So you may have a neighbour, an elderly neighbour perhaps, who cannot clean their home for themselves. And you see that need and you realise, do you know what, I have some time and I certainly have the ability to go and do that for them. So you might go across and establish a habit, in a sense, weaving yourself into their lives so that you restore justice, that you restore well-being to that person's home. And that action will look different in 10,000 different ways and places. It may look like helping a neighbour with shopping or cleaning. It may look like affecting the culture of your workplace. It may look like you getting convicted to pick up the rubbish in your local park. And why does the city rejoice? It says, when the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. It may be better to ask, how does the city rejoice? When I looked at that just over this last week, it says that the rejoicing is not just, hooray, it's my birthday. It's not that kind of a rejoicing. This kind of rejoicing is like a VE Day type of celebration. It kind of has military connections. It's when the conflict is over, when the war has ended, and people come out celebrating the fact that it's over. Can you imagine, as God's people, living in such a way that your city rejoices because of who you are as a group of people? Can you imagine your street, your neighbours rejoicing because of the way in which you've made a contribution to weave back into your street's life some kind of neighbourliness? Can you imagine your work colleagues rejoicing because you inputted into some kind of way that made the culture of that workplace just a better place to be, a place where others flourish? Can you imagine your family rejoicing because you have become somebody that lives for their well-being and not for your own, and it's transformed family life? The righteous are making such a visible difference in their city that those who don't yet know God rejoice and celebrate because they play their part. When I look ahead to the months that are coming, when I look years ahead, I think now is the time that the church needs to be the church that God calls it to be for the sake of the world around us. I don't want to be a part of a community that doesn't do that. I want to be a part of a community where people are living in that kind of a way that it restores communities and neighborhoods and the way in which we work in different spheres in society. I don't want to be a part of a church community whose greatest concern is whether they have pews or not in their church building. Jesus' own mission, as he comes into the world, in Luke's gospel, it says that he says as he announces what he's come to do, he says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim that captives will be released, that the blind will see, that the oppressed will be set free, and that the time of the Lord's favor has come." Jesus' mission as he comes was to restore the world, to restore individual lives, to restore neighborhoods, to restore places of work and the ways we work. So what's our part in it? In some ways, the challenge seems far too big. If I try and think, how can I transform my workplace? How can I transform my neighborhood? How can I transform the church? The challenge seems so large. But it's about stewarding. It's about doing something with the few things that you do have. I read a story just this week, and it seemed like God put it into my hands for my own life, actually, but I share part of it with you. It's about a lady called Jenny. Jenny describes herself as like this. She says, "I'm just a bog standard, middle-aged, middle-class woman." But what happens in Jenny's life, well, one of the things that Jenny loves to do is she makes these pieces of jewelry out of beads. She loves doing it. And on one occasion in a church community, she's asked to do it to try and raise a little bit of money for a project they're doing in the church. And this guy in the church spots it, and he happens to have been looking for somebody who will come and teach the women in the prison where he works how to do bead jewelry. So Jenny mulls it over her head and she thinks, this is crazy. How can I, just a middle-aged woman, just a bog-standard person, how could I take this little skill, this hobby that I have into prisons? But she does. And just listen to part of the story and the difference that it makes. The girls, as they call themselves, enjoyed the beading from session 1 and took great delight in educating Jenny in the ins and ins of prison life. And Jenny just loved seeing the pride in their faces when they made a bracelet, loved seeing a community of trust grow, loved hearing the women talk about their lives, sometimes chaotic, sometimes tragic, sometimes funny. Quite quickly, the prison noticed a dramatic improvement in the mental health of a number of the women. The rhythm of beading, the atmosphere, the chat in the room, and the outlet for frustrated or never exercised creativity, all contributing. Jenny's gifting, as it happened, extended way beyond beading. She was a bringer of peace. It just blows my mind that a lady, or rather that God, through this lady, takes the hobby of beading and transforms the lives of women in prison. What in your life would you describe as I'm just a bricklayer, I'm just a florist, I'm just into doing puzzles, what would it be for you? How could God take that thing that you're into, and how could he work through it for the sake of somebody else? On the way down to our church building today, I popped into a place called Jefferson's. It's our local ice cream parlour. They have some incredible flavours to try, and in my humble opinion, their waffles are to die for. They are incredible, especially with their honeycomb and vanilla ice cream on top. But if you're unsure what to get, they have these little spoons, and you can stand at the counter there, and the guy will let you just take a taste of the different flavours that they have. We need to see ourselves as like these little spoons. Your role in the world, my role in the world, is to give the people around us a foretaste of what heaven is like. So when you use the gifts that you have, the time that you have, the talent that you have, the small things that you can offer, if you use them in the way that God wants you to, for the sake of others, you'll be giving them a foretaste of heaven. At the heart of our church, as we try and learn about what it means to discover life and then live it out, we have this value, one of our 4 values, that says that we invest in others. It's one of the ways that we bring life to those around us. So today, as you sit and reflect on your own or talk to 1 or 2 others about what you've heard today, maybe be asking each other, well, how do you think you can live that out? How could you invest in others? Just one more verse as we finish today. It's from 1 Peter 4:10. It says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. So may you, as you go out to live life this week, may you give people a foretaste of heaven.
Here I am, down on my knees again, surrendering all, surrendering all. Find me here, Lord, as you draw me near, desperate for you, desperate for you. I surrender. Drench my soul as mercy and grace unfold. I hunger and thirst. I hunger and thirst. With arms stretched wide, I know you hear my cry. Speak to me now. Speak to me now. I surrender. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. I surrender. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. Like a rushing wind, Jesus, breathe within. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. Like a mighty storm, stir within my soul. Lord, have your way. Lord, have your way in me. I surrender. to know you more. I want to know you more. I surrender.
As Jim said, we're encouraging everyone this month to connect with one another to discuss what they've heard and what they've learnt. So it's time to put the kettle on, maybe get the biscuits out, and think about where you can prosper on your front line this week. See you soon.